Previously on Leadership Late Night.
Our very own in-house DJ here at Studio A, DJAJ, my daughter Addison. Give it up for her one more time.
We did a lot of research and turns out reviewership is a lot higher when I'm on camera.
Hey buddy, let me talk to Addison. She's supposed to be on the show right now.
DJAJ, it's Dad. Tell him I'm not here right now. She's not here right now. How many subscribers do you have, Dad?
Like 10?
Million?
No, like 10 total.
This little show could actually turn a profit and actually get some advertisers.
KLC is a non-profit, so...
And it's that attitude that's always going to make sure you're a non-profit. We've been over this. Leave the humor to me and Addison.
This guy, allowed through airport security. This guy, definitely getting stopped by TSA.
Dad, enough. We get the point. Are you coaching me right now? Well, you talk the most in the meetings. What does it take for this team to start working together? Bear? Tiggy? Jake? Anybody? I think we made a big breakthrough here.
Currently on Leadership Late Night.
Now what?
Live from Studio A, somewhere inside the great state of Kansas, it's Leadership Late Night, brought to you by the Kansas Leadership Center. I'm DJAJ, rocking the beats and hitting the streets to bring you a new segment of Ding Dong Social Distancing tonight. And joining my dad in this episode, the Commissioner of Education from the state of Kansas, Manny Watson. Now, your host and a part-time pandemic dentist, DJ Whetter.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Leadership Late Night. As always, I'm your host, DJ Whetter, rocking the shorts on bottom and dress on top. Well, look, the concept of this show, as always, very simple. We're trying to find the intersection of humor and leadership. We're going to search for stories of progress. We're going to have a great interview tonight, and we'll have some fun segments along the way. And as DJAJ mentioned in the opening, there might even be a little bit of drama. Look, that said, there was a little drama at the Whetter household over the weekend. Parker, my 6-year-old, lost not one, but 2 front teeth, and he did in a matter of about 5 to 10 minutes. First one came out, we got the second one out just a few minutes later. And I am here to report that is not even close to the most dramatic situation we've had regarding teeth around here. That would go back to when Addison was younger, lost a tooth, and famously asked my wife, Lori, what does the tooth fairy do with all those teeth? Now, I want to preface this story by reminding everybody that when you're in authority, there is this urge to provide answers, right? We don't want to say, I don't know. But sometimes an act of leadership in a situation where you don't have the answer is to say, I don't know. And it actually can be a good thing for the system. I think we've learned that a lot during this pandemic. And it also applies to the tooth fairy because truthfully, none of us know what the tooth fairy does with the teeth. All we know is there's some cold hard cash that goes along with them. Parker picked up $5 this week for losing both front teeth from the tooth fairy. So pretty awesome. But when young DJ AJ asked Lori, what does the tooth fairy do with all the teeth? Lori reported back, she builds a house with them. To this day, DJ AJ refuses to put teeth under her pillow. She leaves them outside in the hallway. Why? Because it's pretty creepy to think about the tooth fairy building a house out of teeth. Well, DJ AJ, you hit the beats, I'll hit the desk, and let's get this show underway. All right, back at the desk, and so glad to be back with you. I know it's been a week for those of you who join us regularly. We're going to be a Thursday evening show, and I'm excited about that. We're going to be able to build our audience, really get some great interviews going, and DJAJ is going to actually get some time to not just be a child actor. I had some people on me, right? Child labor laws. So we will be regularly Thursday, 9 p.m., sticking with you through this pandemic and beyond. So as a reminder, we're going to get to interviews, we're going to get to segments, but after this show, there's always the after party on Zoom. So Julian's on tech tonight. Julian Montes, thank you so much as always for being my technical backup on this show. And Julian's going to post that Zoom link, and I hope that you'll join us on Zoom. I hope that you'll come be a part of the show, the after party, and discuss what you heard tonight. Because as I mentioned in the opening, hopefully we'll have some laughs. We're going to get right to a segment here quickly. But also we've got the State Commissioner of Education on the show tonight, and I am so excited for you to hear from him about what the new normal of education may look like come fall. I think you're going to find it very interesting. Before we get to that, though, let's get to this. It is the third episode, a fan favorite, social ding-dong distancing. Addison, what supplies do we need for this adventure?
You're gonna need hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, and a super long microphone.
That's actually fake.
True.
We're at the Toburin house. Callie and Tanner are Addison's cousins, and Christy is my wife, Lori's sister. Back up, back up, back up, back up. Social distance. Might take a minute. Let's try it again. Oh, I hear Domino.
Can the dog open the door?
Well, we've got a bit of a situation here, Addison. It appears for the first time on this segment, the people we are trying to socially ding-dong distance ourselves from are not home.
Nope.
Did you text Callie to see if she was home?
No, I didn't want to ruin the surprise.
That's a great point. So what have we learned here today? What leadership advice has this moment in time taught us? I agree. We're not really sure, but there's definitely something to be learned. And for that, we'll leave the work to you all. This has been another edition of Social Ding-Dong Distancing. Sort of. It turns out they're fishing at the lake. What are your thoughts on that?
They're having way more fun than us.
Look, for those of you who think that segment is pre-planned, it is not. We go to a house, we ring the doorbell, and we have a conversation. And in this case, there was no conversation to be had. And it's also a lesson in procrastination. Don't wait till the day of the show to do your social ding-dong distancing, because then you're left with that. But leadership lessons abound, and I'd love you to share some with me. What did you learn about leadership from that segment? Because Addison and I are still very unsure. Well, I have no doubt you'll learn a lot from our interview tonight. I am so excited to welcome to the show the State Commissioner on Education, Randy Watson. Randy is going to join us, and he'll share what it's been like to get through this pandemic, but I'd specifically invite you to pay attention to what does it mean, right? What does it mean for there to be a new normal for the education system in the state of Kansas? And we get into that conversation midway through the interview, and I think you'll be fascinated to hear what the new normal for education may be in the state of Kansas and beyond. Well, good evening, Dr. Randy Watson. Thank you for joining us on Leadership Late Night. Dr. Watson, obviously the Kansas Commissioner of Education, and we're excited to have you here. Thanks for taking a few minutes this evening.
DJ, my pleasure. Thanks for having me this evening.
I think a lot of organizations are starting to talk about what's next, where do we go from here, and I wonder if you'd start by sharing what it's been like so far and where you sit today as you think about education in this state?
Schools are the great equalizer. And when you can't allow students to come to school, you get some disequalization that occurs because there's some kids that their home is not set up to be a learning environment. And you have others that are able to actually extend their learning. So that gap, and I'm not just talking about academically, I'm talking about social, emotionally, and goal setting and all of those things that make up a successful adult. It's very clear that we have a better opportunity when school's in session than when it's not to try to break down those barriers.
But with the COVID-19 pandemic threatening to end in-person education for the rest of the school year, Watson was left to adapt quickly. In mid-March, with more than 280 public schools and 70 private schools in the state of Kansas in need of new education guidelines, his first move was to call 3 award-winning teachers: National Hall of Famer and Bueller Assistant Superintendent Cindy Couchman, National Hall of Famer and Andover Technology Lead Diane Smokorowski, and Tabitha Rossbrook, a Winfield preschool educator who is one of 4 finalists for National Teacher of the Year.
So I asked those 3, would you spearhead 25 teachers or so to really put together some guidance documents for how we're going to survive the rest of the year if at that time, over that weekend, we don't come back to school. And of course, by Tuesday, we knew we weren't going to come back to school. By Wednesday at 11:30 that night, they had the plan distributed to all Kansas schools. We actually had some teachers call me. And you figure, DJ, they'd say, hey, if you need anyone, I'm here to help. I'd really like to be a part. Some of them said, no, you don't. I'm not asking to be a part. I am going to be a part of it. You don't even have to put my name on it. I'm not asking for any compensation, but I'm going to help. I'm just going to help.
Those guidelines that were created by a team of about 40 educators have been the foundation for progress in Kansas and beyond.
So we gave school districts that information on Wednesday and said, listen, take the rest of this week and the next week to plan. Get your staff together and take this document and plan for what it will look like a week and a half from now. And then every school district did that, came up with their plan, and now we've been implementing those plans ever since. From an education standpoint, we leaned on teacher educators to write the continuous learning guidance. And over 40 of them did that with no compensation in 48 hours. Think about that. So when, I'm a huge fan of the Kansas Leadership Center, always have been. And, the whole aspect, leadership are people from any position, anywhere, right? Here were people that, they had been at the top of their game teaching. We asked them to lead a state through a total different learning path that we didn't even imagine 48 hours prior. And they had to give guidance as to how to lead, and they did it in 48 hours. Over 25 states have asked us for those plans to copy and emulate. Governor Kelly called it last week the gold standard, and it is.
The guidelines were important, but Dr. Watson understands the loss associated with schools closing reaches far beyond the classroom.
Intellectually, we know schools are social organisms. People come there for social, right? Never, though, was more apparent than the day that school was called off on March 17th. My phone and email was flooded on the night of the 17th and the 18th from 2 basic questions. What are we going to do about prom? And what are we going to do about graduation, which are social events? And of course, that was what everyone wanted to know about. And still to this day, I think there's mourning around those 2 events because we can't get together and the seniors won't have this closure if we're not able to do that at some point.
Beyond speaking to that loss, Dr. Watson is also using his formal education to inform his department's next moves for the state.
Well, I'm a history guy. That's my undergraduate degree. So I think people really, you can get the Cliff Notes version and you read the books on the pandemic of 1918, the flu of 18. And it wasn't the first wave that did the destruction in the United States. It was the second wave. The first and third wave, there were 3 waves, were about the same, but that second wave was what was brutal. And so what you don't know in the fall, winter is once you layer on the natural flu, and if this comes back, what does that look like? So we'll start getting educators together pretty quickly in the next few days, and we'll start putting together what we're going to, we haven't even come up with a name for it, but it's going to be our version 2.
And that means figuring out what the new normal looks like for Kansas schools.
What we did in version 1 was say, how do we just try to sustain some kind of learning till we can get through this initial wave? Now we're going to have to ask the question, what do we have to do to sustain learning when we're in a new normal, DJ, as you said? And that may be you're in and out of school, or you're in school some days and not other days, or you're extended for 2 weeks for a while, or you have to close a portion of the building in one community and not in another. So what you're going to see us really move toward are some recommendations that, yes, seat time can continue, but really trying to help school districts move to competency-based education, meaning when you know it and the learning has been validated, you can move on at your own pace.
The good news for Kansas, this methodology mirrors a redesign plan that the State Department of Education created following a listening process by Dr. Watson when he left a 30-year career as a history teacher, coach, and administrator to become Education Commissioner. The Kansans Can School Redesign Project has a simple purpose.
We have created schools that are very efficient. We can move large numbers of kids around in a very efficient manner. And now we're going to have to think, how do we move students around in a very educational manner? And we may lose a little bit of efficiency until we figure out what that new system looks like. So that's what we're going to try to do. And that's what we're trying to help. That's really what redesign is about, and those schools that are already in it. So we had always said, we wanted all schools involved starting in redesign by 2026, and we may be speeding that up a little bit because of necessity.
Watson compares this redesign project to the United States' journey to landing on the moon. It's phased, highly experimental, and it relies on work by schools across the state. 67 school districts and 160 schools are now involved in redesign. The ultimate goal? Make sure Kansas students are set up for success. Today, about 71% of the jobs in the state require some sort of post-secondary education. When Watson undertook the redesign effort in 2016, only about 44% of Kansas students were getting any sort of post-secondary degree or certification.
We need about 70 to 75% of our kids to graduate high school and earn some kind of post-secondary credential. And for too long, we were sorting and selecting kids based upon the really good ones got to go to the university and the others just went to work. And that was fine, because if you come out of, I've been watching stories on the Roosevelts on PBS here, and last night I was watching that, Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal and the Depression. But as you come out of that and you get past World War II, our economy's humming. And what they needed was workers, right? Unskilled, really hardworking people. And we built our whole America on that. Today, what we need is skilled work. So we need a lot of it. We need less unskilled, but we need a lot of skilled work. But where we went wrong all those years, for today's economy, is that to say every kid, all right, if you're going to go on to school, what you need to do is go to the KU or Harvard or, Creighton or Wichita State, and then otherwise just go get a job. Now it's, no, you may want to think about diesel mechanic certification, or you may want to think about a welding certification tagged on with a business degree so you can run that. So there's all kinds of skilled labor that we need to think about, and that's what we're trying to get to. When we went into this crisis, we had increased that in 2 years, we had increased it 4%. So we were really excited about that. We had gone from 44 to 48%. We hope that continues. But DJ, let me just tell you, my biggest fear is that the class of 2020 has been severely disrupted. And what will that do to their plans? Whether my plan was to go into the Navy, but I don't know now because Dad lost their job and maybe I'll set out a year. So this disruption we may see hurt this class. We'll have to wait and see when we get to the fall. Will they actually execute the plans they were telling us at the 1st of March once this pandemic hit?
The hope? is the learning of schools from early redesign work will allow Kansas to continue to adapt in this new pandemic world.
This has caused all of us some pain. It's caused, I mean, will business ever look the same when we come out of this? You have to wonder that. And so I think everyone's asking the question, what will school look like going forward? Our redesigned schools have helped us in leading that way, and we will lean on them heavily as we start to put together those models to help other schools in the future.
Well, I'm going to leave it here for you. Final question. I know you're a history guy. Those are your roots. Give me some hope. We're coming through this. We're looking towards what's next. And my guess is when we look at the past, there may be some indicators of how we move forward and where we find hope amidst this pandemic. Right?
When Churchill says, when Nazi Germany is bombing day and night England, and there's no hope, he has no resources. He's begging Roosevelt to get in the war because he so much needs our resources. And he stands before the British people and says, when we look back upon this, this will be our finest hour. To just do that, I firmly believe when we get to the fall, we will be open. We will be back in service. It may not be exactly as we know it today, but I think we've learned enough that we will be better because of it. And I firmly believe that. And I think we've seen so many people that have escalated their leadership that I'm just blessed and grateful that we live in Kansas where we know each other, we rely on each other. And I think come the fall, we're going to be better, a better education system because of it.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. Thank you so much for joining us on Leadership Late Night.
Thank you, DJ.
Any doubt that Dr. Watson is a history teacher? Just enjoyed that interview so much, and his ability to look back at history but also to project forward, I think, is a real gift, right? To understand that there's data to take away from the past that may help inform where we're at, but I also get this vibe that he understands this is like nothing else we've ever experienced. And I want to get to your comments in just a little bit. And I'd ask you to keep sending your comments in, but I want to start with this idea from Dr. Watson that Julian talks about here. He said, I'm getting a lot of uncertainty and conflict vibes from what he's saying, but a lot of holding to purpose as well. I don't want to pat Julian on the back too much. He's on staff here. He should get this stuff right. But I love this idea that if you reflect back to the opening, there's a little bit of I don't know in what we're talking about here, right, from Dr. Watson, in the sense that we're going to figure it out. We're going to rely on good stakeholders here to do the work, and yet there's some unknowns. What might it look like to be in school for a set amount of time, but not with a full group of students, or different school districts having different plans? And I was just super impressed with the flexibility he spoke about and the desire he has to make sure every student has a great education in this state, but the understanding it'll take different types of learning for every student to get what they need. And I think that is a beautiful pivot for the state at this time. And the idea that 25 other states in this great nation have called to ask about Kansas's plan should be something that makes Kansans smile tonight, but also says something about the collaboration going on around the country if you're watching in from somewhere else. So I just found that very energizing, that conversation, and I hope you did as well. I want to take a moment to plug more in-depth reporting that we're doing here at the Kansas Leadership Center. For more stories like this one from Dr. Watson, in fact, you can go in the archives and learn more about redesign, a whole journal dedicated to that topic just a little ways back. But today, a new story at klcjournal.com on language barriers and how they pose a steep hurdle for Kansas governments to overcome during COVID-19. You'll hear a little bit and the work done from Claudia in this. She was a guest of ours early on in this show and doing some great work there. I also want to take an opportunity tonight to introduce a new bit of information that we're going to be sharing each week on tons of social media channels, all the social media that the Kansas Leadership Center has. We're going to start to share some civic engagement tips. What does it mean to be civically engaged during a pandemic? We have a civic engagement action committee that meets at the Kansas Leadership Center quarterly. They've been doing that work virtually, and they've started to release some suggestions. So this from Shannon Brake out of McPherson. Sometimes people don't just need a small bit of direction to act, or they do just need a small bit of direction to act, and the permission to do it. Can you do this one thing? It can be daunting to self-start during a crisis. I want to share 2 more tips tonight from different members of the Civic Engagement Committee. This from Dalton Glasscock. Attend an online forum for a civic group you normally wouldn't have attended in person. What do you have to lose? No need to talk to folks or interact. Just sit with a glass of wine and listen. I love that idea. Grab a glass of wine, sit in on some sort of meeting that you can attend virtually. Some of you may be doing that right now. I hope you've got a glass of something in your hand as you enjoy this. And finally, this from Jim from the Olathe Latino Coalition chair. And I just think this is awesome. He talks about the work the Olathe Police Department is doing and how they're still engaging community, Olathe youth, during COVID-19 in many different ways. And so I hope what you see there and what I hope to share is just that there's many different ways to continue to be civically engaged in your community, even within a stay-at-home order, all right? Even as we begin to ease restrictions, large groups aren't coming back anytime soon. And so starting to ask yourself what it means to be civically engaged, how you can be a part of progress, like Dr. Watson was talking about, I think is a very fine act of leadership right now during this time. Let's get to some of your comments tonight as we kind of scroll through. I'm going to look over to left here on my other screen and see what is popping up across the way. Kathy Gray Carter joining us tonight, and she said, I'm so glad to hear that KSDE is working at looking ahead to the fall with the coronavirus still being on the scene. Yeah, look, I think it's important that we acknowledge this may just be wave 1. And an act of leadership is to say, we don't know. We ought to plan as if there will be other waves. That's the healthiest way to go about it. To assume it'll go away does nobody any good. If it does, great. If it doesn't, great. We've got a plan. Myron Griswold weighing in tonight, thanking Dr. Watson. I agree, just an amazing interview. Ian saying, love the reframe from crisis to our finest moment. Yeah, pretty cool, right? Jeff Tuttle weighing in, saying it was great. And Jeff, thank you as always for the amazing photo work you do. Dave Whetter weighing in, maybe some relation to me there. Excellent, good focus to the future. Kathy again, reframing and adaptive work at its best. Ian Brown, the uncertainty, I don't know, seems to be a key defining feature of leadership versus just authority. Yeah, how about this idea that we can say, I don't know, when we're in a position of authority, and that might be an act of leadership. It might actually energize others to do some work, and it might be what the moment needs. Don't hear me saying, don't provide protection, direction, and order when you can, but when there's adaptive work to do, the act of leadership when you're in a position of authority becomes, how do you delegate? How do you energize others? And I saw Dr. Watson doing that, but he had 3 go-to teachers there, probably more, right, that he mentioned. And then beyond that, other teachers called him and he said, all right, great, let's be a part of this. He formed that committee. He could have very easily been at the front of that work. And I heard him say, I got out of the way and let those who knew how to do it currently do the work. And I think that's pretty neat. Kelly Glanville weighing in tonight. 2 suggestions for fall. 1, give recommendations, but let districts do what is best. So, for instance, rural schools one way, but another for urban. And 2, let's look to European models as well. Just a thought, but glad we have Dr. Watson. I heard that flexibility from Dr. Watson, that each district is going to have to think about what it means to be a part of this, and we need people thinking in those ways. So I just think a really neat conversation tonight from Dr. Watson. Boy, the comments are just rolling in, and I'm thankful for all of you that watch this evening. But believe it or not, we're running out of time. So I encourage you to keep the chat going. But more importantly, if you want to keep the conversation going, like I said, grab your favorite beverage. Everything, from water, soda to a little bit harder stuff allowed. And join us in the Zoom room. We'll be headed there in just 1 minute. Again, Julian has pinned that Zoom link inside the Facebook Live chat. And so that will do it for this portion on this side of the Facebook Live session of Leadership Late Night. But I hope to see a bunch of you in the Zoom room where we're going to discuss what it means to be civically engaged right now, what a new normal for the education system may look like throughout the country, and we'll have a little bit of fun in the Zoom room as well, and we won't go any longer than 20, 30 minutes max. So if you haven't joined us on the Zoom after party yet, be sure to do that tonight. Until next Thursday, I'm DJ Whetter, and as always, thank you so much for joining us on Leadership Late Night. DJAJ Time for bed.
Through the magic of pre-recorded video, I'm actually already in bed. Now, your moments of hope.
My